My world came back in a rush of pain. My head throbbed, my arms bound tight behind me. I tasted blood. The room spun, cold concrete beneath me. A shadow moved, a man, tall and broad, looming over me. He knelt, breath warm and sour. "Easy now," he whispered. "We're just going to talk." The nightmare had found its voice. My eyes slowly adjusted to the dim light. The room was a concrete box, grey walls, grey floor, grey ceiling, no windows, just one heavy-looking steel door with no handle on my side. The place felt like a tomb, a forgotten bunker buried deep beneath the earth. The air was stale, recycled, tasting of metal and decay. A dark stain marred the concrete near my head. It was wide and irregular, its edges crusted and brown. I knew what it was. Blood. Some of it was fresh, a brighter, wetter crimson that had to be mine. But the older, darker patches told a different story of someone else, someone before me. The single light bulb overhead hummed with a low, incessant buzz. It cast a sickly yellow glow over everything, draining the world of color and life. The shadows it created were deep and stark, hiding corners of the room in absolute blackness. I imagined things lurking in those shadows, waiting. My gaze darted around, searching for anything. A weapon, a tool, a weakness in the walls. There was nothing. The room was bare, stripped of anything that could offer hope or comfort. It was a sterile environment designed for one purpose: despair. The cold of the floor seeped through my clothes, chilling me to the bone. The man who held me captive sat on a simple wooden stool, the only piece of furniture in the room. He watched me with an unnerving stillness. His head was shaved, his scalp gleaming under the harsh light. He was dressed in simple dark clothing that seemed to absorb the light around him. His face was gaunt with sharp cheekbones and eyes that were sunk deep in their sockets. They were pale eyes, the color of a winter sky, and they held a strange, sorrowful intensity. He wasn't looking at me with rage or malice. It was something far more disturbing. It was a look of profound loneliness and need. I tried to speak, to ask him what he wanted, who he was, but my throat was tight with fear and only a dry croak came out. He offered a small, sad smile. It didn't reach his eyes. "Thirsty?" he asked, his voice still that same quiet rumble. He didn't wait for an answer. He rose from the stool and disappeared into one of the dark corners, returning a moment later with a metal cup. He knelt and held it to my lips. Water. It was lukewarm and tasted of rust, but it was the most precious thing I had ever known. As I drank, my eyes fell again on the bloodstain on the floor. His gaze followed mine. "Don't mind that," he said softly. "Things can get a little messy sometimes." He took the cup away and returned to his stool, pale eyes fixed on me. "I'm not going to hurt you," he said. But the ropes on my wrists and the blood on the floor said otherwise. "I just want to talk. It's been a long time since I had someone to listen." His voice was heavy with grief. He spoke of his brother, gone now, lost to a meaningless accident. A single tear slid down his cheek. "You have his eyes," he whispered. Dread washed over me. He had chosen me for a reason. He smiled, wide and broken. "We have to be twins." He called his brother Leo. The name fell from his lips like a prayer, a sacred word in a profane place. He circled me, stories vivid with laughter and sorrow, desperate to resurrect Leo through words. I was to be the vessel for this phantom, my fear growing as he showed me keepsakes, a locket, a stone, a faded photo. His love had curdled into madness. "The resemblance is there," he whispered. "We just need to make it perfect." The change had to start with my hair. Leo never liked it long, said it got in his eyes. He returned from the shadows with old buzzing clippers, his smile unnerving. "Time for a haircut, brother," he said, voice trembling with excitement. I shook my head, terrified, but he forced my head forward. When he finished, he held up a cracked mirror. I saw a stranger. "Twins," he whispered. "We're finally twins." The ritual wasn't over. Looking the part was only the beginning. Now I had to feel the part. He dragged out a dusty box, the stench of mothballs and decay filling the air. Inside, Leo's clothes, stained and faded, folded like relics. He tossed them at me. "Get dressed," he ordered. My hands, raw and bleeding, fumbled with the too small jeans and flannel shirt. The fabric clung to me, a second skin that reeked of death. As I buttoned the shirt, he circled, scrutinizing, satisfied. Then I saw the wall, photos of other men, all shaved, all terrified. I wasn't the first. Hope is a dangerous thing here, a flicker in endless dark. I became his puppet, mimicking Leo, waiting for a crack in his madness. One day, lost in grief, he left my hands untied. He stared at the wall of photos, whispering Leo's name, oblivious. I crept toward the door, heart pounding. A floorboard creaked above. He turned, eyes full of betrayal. He stood, a sad smile twisting his lips. "Oh, Leo," he whispered, "you were going to leave me." I froze, hope snuffed out. The punishment was not swift. He wanted me to feel it. He tied my hands tighter than ever, then sat silent, watching. Finally he spoke. Brothers don't leave each other. He pulled out a clasp knife, blade stained with old blood. Pinning my hand, he whispered, "Every time you try to leave, you lose a piece of yourself." The blade soared through my little finger. Pain exploded, blood pooling. He held up the severed finger, triumphant. "Now a part of you will always stay." I screamed, and he smiled. Days blurred into agony. My mutilated hand throbbed, wrapped in a filthy rag. He was almost cheerful, our bond sealed in blood. I tried to escape twice more. Each time he caught me. Each failure cost me another finger. My left hand became a mangled testament to his control. "That's your good hand," he'd say, sparing the right. Leo was right-handed. He traced my ruined palm, whispering, "It keeps you here with me." With each finger, he carved away my identity, leaving only Leo. The room decayed with me. Bloodstains spread, flies swarmed, the air thickened with rot. My hope faded, pain clouding every thought. He thrived in the filth, his stories growing desperate, fragmented. Sometimes I heard him sobbing in the night, a hollow man, not a monster. But his grief only fueled his madness. The punishments escalated. When I failed to listen, he took a tow. The pain was new, deeper, meant to keep me from running. I knew my next escape had to be the last. My world had shrunk to the size of my pain. My mangled hand throbbed, my foot a universe of agony. I'd given up on the door, a steel tombstone guarded by a madman. But as my captor lost himself in delusions, I found a new focus: the walls. One day, behind a pile of bloody rags, I saw a crack, small, almost invisible, a weakness. I waited, then crawled. The crack led to a dark, hollow space, the crawl space under the house. The discovery of the crawl space changed everything. I worked in silence, chipping away at the wall with broken fingers and a shard of concrete, my hands raw and bleeding. My captor, lost in grief, sobbed for his brother, blind to my secret labor. The sound of his weeping masked my escape. When the hole was finally big enough, I crawled toward freedom, leaving his sorrow behind. Adrenaline flooded my system, burning away pain and fear, leaving only cold focus. The house echoed with his weeping as I scrambled to the corner, desperate for escape. The hole looked impossibly small, but there was no turning back. I shoved through, concrete scraping my skin, breath ragged in the thick, claustrophobic air. My hips cleared the hole. I tumbled into darkness, free of the room, but not the house. I crawled toward a faint line of gray light. Freedom. It was the storm-darkened sky. It was freedom. The faint line of grey light was my only compass. It was salvation, a promise of a world beyond this tomb. I crawled towards it, my body a wreck, my mind a single screaming command move. The crawl space was a tight, suffocating hell of its own. Cobwebs, thick as cotton, broke across my face. and the unseen things that scurried in the darkness brushed against my raw hands. Behind me, the sounds of my captor were a symphony of rage. He was tearing at the hole, his furious grunts echoing in the enclosed space. The concrete scraped and crumbled. He was widening the opening. He was coming for me. The race was on. I was almost there. The light was brighter now, filtering through a lattice grate at the edge of the foundation. I could smell the rain, the clean, sharp scent of a world being washed clean. It was the smell of everything I had lost. Just a few more feet. My lungs burned, my muscles screamed, my good hand was a mess of cuts and splinters from the gravelly earth. I pushed onward, fueled by a desperation that was more powerful than pain. The grate was just ahead. I could see the individual drops of rain splashing on the muddy ground outside. It was real. I wasn't dreaming. I was going to make it. Then a hand clamped around my ankle. It was a grip of iron, a manacle of flesh and bone. He'd squeezed through the hole. He was faster than I thought possible, his madness giving him a terrifying agility. He yanked, and the sudden force sent a bolt of pure agony through my mangled foot. I screamed, a thin, pathetic sound that was swallowed by the dirt and the dark. I was so close to the rain and the sky, but he was dragging me back into the nightmare, back into the grey room with the bloody floor and the ghost of his brother. I kicked out with my good leg, my heel connecting with something solid. I heard a grunt of pain, and for a second the grip loosened. It was all the chance I needed. I surged forward, clawing at the dirt, pulling myself the last few inches towards the lattice. My mind was a white-hot blank of pure panic. There was no thought, no strategy, just the primal, animalistic need to get out, to escape the hand in the dark that sought to drag me back into the grave. The struggle was silent, but for our ragged breathing and the scraping of our bodies against the earth. He was right behind me, his breath hot on my leg. I clawed at the rotted grate, desperate for escape. The wood splintered, and cold rain hit my face. Freedom at last. But he still had my foot, his grip relentless, fueled by loss and madness. We fought in the mud and dark, a tangle of limbs, teeth, and fists. My hand found a rock. With the last of my strength, I swung. The world went silent as it connected. His body went limp. The pressure on my throat vanished, and I gasped for air, the cold, wet oxygen a shock to my starving lungs. He slumped to the side, a low moan escaping his lips. He wasn't dead. I hadn't killed him. But he was stunned, wounded, his eyes dazed and confused. He lay there in the mud, crying again, but this time they were quiet, whimpering sobs, the sobs of a wounded animal. "Leo," he whispered, his voice thick with blood and pain. "You hurt me, Leo." He looked at me not with hate, but with a look of deep, sorrowful confusion, as if he couldn't comprehend this final betrayal. I didn't wait. I didn't hesitate. I left him there, crying in the dark. I scrambled back to the opening I had torn in the lattice grate and began to pull myself through. It was a slow, agonizing process. Every muscle protested, every wound screamed. As I dragged my legs out, my injured foot caught on a jagged piece of the broken grate. I felt a sharp, tearing sensation, a pain so intense it almost made me black out. I looked down and saw the grisly price of my final push for freedom. My last remaining toe on that foot was gone, left behind in the crawl space. Another piece of me sacrificed to the monster. I tumbled out into the storm, landing in the soft mud. The rain was cold and hard, plastering my shaved head, washing the blood and grime from my body. It was a brutal, cleansing deluge. I lay there for a moment, my body a symphony of pain, just feeling the rain on my skin. I was out. I was free. The house loomed behind me, a dark silhouette against the grey, churning sky. From the crawl space, I could still hear him. He was still crying, his voice a faint, pathetic echo. He was calling his brother's name, calling for me. I forced myself to my feet. I had to get away. I stumbled into the woods that surrounded the house, my bare, mutilated feet slipping in the mud, thorns and branches tearing at my skin. I didn't know where I was going. I just ran. I ran from the house, from the grey room, from the ghost of Leo. I ran from the sound of his crying and the memory of his hands. I ran with the blood from my foot, leaving a trail behind me in the wet leaves, a final fading signature of the nightmare I had escaped. The storm raged around me, but for the first time in an eternity, I felt the cold, hard, beautiful reality of being alive. They found me on a deserted road, a bleeding ghost in the dawn. The trucker's face was shock and pity. The hospital lights blurred, antiseptic and bright, but I was still filthy, stitched and bandaged, unable to answer their questions. Now this motel room is my new prison. At night I hear him, his sobbing, his echo. My missing fingers ache. The doctors call it phantom pain, but I know it's him. I'm not safe from the ghost that lives inside my head. I stare at my reflection in the grimy motel mirror, the haunted eyes, the stubble, the stranger I've become. He stripped away who I was, piece by piece, until only this broken shell remained. The real walls are gone, but the ones in my mind are stronger than concrete. Freedom is supposed to feel like peace. For me, it feels empty. I know I'll hear him crying for the rest of my life.